Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time, but I'm back and I'm ready to go. And today we're looking at MCP servers in UiPath. First though, a small disclaimer. This stuff is brand new, fresh out of the oven. In fact, parts of it is still in the oven, so I or anyone else have barely had a chance to try any of this stuff out, and certainly not all of it. This is a first look of a product in public preview, and things are almost certain to change by the time they're finally released. Anyways, before we dig into the demo itself, I want to talk briefly about what agents are and what they have to do with MCP servers. Well, an agent, specifically in UiPath, is basically just an automation, not an automation like we've come to know them, built in UiPath Studio with well-defined steps and if this, then that, but an automation that is built using mainly two things: goals and tools. So when you build an agent, you state a goal. Calculate the car insurance for Billy. He's 22 years old, he's slightly insane, and he just bought a 5,000 horsepower car. Something like that anyways. So goals are expressed using prompts, much like you know from prompting, for example, ChatGPT. The point is you use natural language to state your goals. And the platform, because it has a large language model baked in, understands the goals that you express. The other main part of an agent, and I might be oversimplifying this a bit, are the tools or capabilities that the agent can then use to perform the work that then meets the goals you stated. In UiPath, these tools can be as simple as activities as we know them from Studio. They can be automations that we or someone else have built, or they can even be other agents. But again, when we build and add these tools to an agent, we describe them in natural language. That way, when we tell an agent to do something, the goal, because it understands both the goals and the available tools, it can pair them up when it thinks that's the right thing to do. But today, when we build agents in UiPath and in most other tools, we add the tools to each agent one by one, depending on what we think the agent will need. So we say, hey agent, build me a house. Here's a hammer, here's a saw, here's a drill, and so on. Do your thing. So while agent behavior itself is very dynamic and non-deterministic, the way we make the tools available to the agent, that is today very static. But MCP servers are about to change all that, because going forward, we add tools to the server, and then we expose the server to the agent. So instead of giving the agent 1, 2, or 3 tools, we give it a toolbox. So now we'll say, hey agent, build me a house. The toolbox is in the shed. Go take whatever you need, then do your thing. So in short, MCP servers and the model context protocol make this dynamic discovery possible. It's not yet fully implemented in UiPath or in very many other places really, but already now we can set up an MCP server inside UiPath Orchestrator, and we can expose the tools that live inside UiPath and then use them outside our environment. And before long, maybe even already, I may just not know how to do it, we'll be able to bring in external MCP servers to utilize in our UiPath agents. But in this video, we'll let others call automations that we expose in UiPath using MCP. So let's build a simple automation in UiPath Studio Web, publish it using an MCP server and Orchestrator, and then today we'll use Postman to test if this even works. Let's jump in. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to build a simple automation. We'll go into Studio Web. We'll create a new RPA workflow. And we will call the solution Jeppe's solution. Why not? Inside the solution here, we have an RPA workflow project, and we'll name that project Math Stuff. Inside the Math Stuff project, we have a workflow or a XAML file, and that's one workflow. And we are going to rename this to add numbers. I think you can see where this is going. So in the data manager here, we're going to add some arguments. We'll add one called in num1. It's an ingoing argument. It's a number. We'll create it. We'll create another one. We'll call that in num2. Also a number. Create it. And then finally, we'll create an outgoing argument. That's going to be our result. There we go. Then over here in the workflow itself, we're going to do a quick log message. We will say incoming values are, and then we'll click the number 1 and number 2, and then we'll put and in between like that. Then we will set the variable value of the outgoing argument. So we'll select that and we'll say this is equal to 1 and 2 added with each other. Oops, there we go. Finally, we're going to do another log message. Result is, and then the outgoing result. And just because we want to make sure that this is actually what is doing the calculation, we're going to change this and add just an extra 1 to the value. So it's going to actually do an incorrect calculation, but then we know that this is the automation doing the calculation and not just the LLM. Right? Go back to our project here, and then we can duplicate this SAML file and rename this one subtract numbers, and then change that one so it actually does a subtraction instead of an addition. Cool. So now we actually built an automation. We're just going to do one more thing. We're going to take the subtract numbers workflow here and set that as an entry point, because then we can select that in Orchestrator when we add the process to our folder. So we'll publish it. And that'll just take a few minutes. And while it does that, we'll just wait. And there we go. We can check our package. We can go over here and we can actually deploy the package. We'll choose to deploy it into our demos folder, which is the folder I have over here. It has nothing in it right now. And we'll click deploy. And we can see here now that the deployment is in progress. Now it's successful. And then when we go into our demos folder, we can see that it now created a subfolder here called Jeppe Solution. In that subfolder, if we click on the automations, we can see that there's one called math stuff, and that math stuff process points to the main entry point in the project we just built called add numbers. So we're just going to do a quick edit of that. Click next, and then instead of math stuff, we're going to call it add numbers and update it. Then we're going to add another process, selecting my math stuff package. And then instead of the add numbers entry point, we'll use the subtract numbers entry point. Click next, and call that subtract numbers. And create and close. So now we have in our folder, we have two processes that we could run, and we could run them from here if we wanted to. An important thing to note in our folder is that we do need in this folder to have a robot active. In this case, I have a serverless robot connected to it, so this can actually run the automations. It could be an unattended robot, or whatever. Anyways, now we have our automations, the tools that we want to expose using the MCP server. So up here in the menu bar, we have the MCP servers item, and you can see that it is in preview. So if I click that, you can see I don't have any MCP servers. If I add an MCP server, I can choose between UiPath, coded, command, and remote. And I'm not going to get into these other ones, but the UiPath one is basically where you expose artifacts, as they're called, from UiPath in an MCP server for the outside world to use. So we'll call this one Jeppe's math server. You cannot have spaces and stuff in the name. That will generate a URL here, and we can give it a description here. Contains functions and let's call it tools for performing calculations. Then we need to add the tools. We're just creating the server here. We need to show it what tools it should contain. So we'll click add tool. We can see we can choose between automations, agents, agentic processes, API workflows, and I'm sure more stuff will be added later. We're just going to click add numbers, and we can give that a description. Can add to numbers, right? And we can add another tool, subtract numbers, and we will say that can subtract two numbers. Right. So now we have defined our MCP server, given it a name. It has generated a URL for us. We're going to copy that. And then we've given it a short description and added two tools, each with their own short description. We'll click add. So now we have an MCP server. Now, the way we test this is by using Postman, and you cannot use the web-based version of Postman for this. You have to download the desktop client. I've done that here. And what I can do here is I can create a new workspace of the type MCP. And when I then paste in the URL that we just copied inside of Orchestrator and click connect, it's going to try to load the capabilities from our server. It can't do that because it needs to authenticate or authorize against something. What we need is what's called a bearer token. And all of this authorization stuff seems like it's not, I don't know. I'm not sure how to do it really. But I found a workaround at least so that we can get this to work. And the way we do this is we go to Orchestrator. And then go to the URL in the top here. And after Orchestrator, we just type in Swagger. And this gives us basically the Swagger user interface, which is a way to test the Orchestrator API. You need to make sure that you are authorized. You can see here that my padlock up here is actually closed. If it wasn't closed, if I was signed out, you can see it's kind of open now. Because I'm signed in to Orchestrator, all I need to do is just click authorize in this dialog and then click close. Now we can see we're authorized. Then if I click, for example, the folders section here, I can go down to the function called get OData folders. That'll give me all of the folders that are in Orchestrator. Again, this is not something we really want to do, but we need to do it in order to get a bearer token. And I click try it out over here on the right. Scroll down a little bit and click execute. That's going to execute and then give me a list of the folders in this Orchestrator. But more interesting, it's going to give us a bearer token up here in this section. So I'm just going to copy this very, very long string here. Like so. Copy it. And then go back into Postman, the Postman desktop client again, very important. Then I click authorization. And for the authorization type, I click bearer token. I paste in my token over here in this text box. And now I click connect again. Now it says connected down here. That means if I go back here, we can see in the tools section that we have two tools, add numbers and subtract numbers. So what this means is that now we are connected to our MCP server and we can actually make calls against these functions. Now what happens when we make calls against these functions is, of course, we're going to run our automation. So if we just quickly go back to Orchestrator, go into the solution folder and find our automations and look at the jobs list, we can see that we don't have any jobs that have run recently in this folder. So going back to the Postman client, if I click add numbers, it'll present me with the values that I can, feed to this automation, which is num1 and num2 in order to add these two numbers. We're going to add 3 and 3. That should give us the result 6. But because we made that little extra addition inside of our automation, it should return a 7. So if I click run here, if we make a quick switch back to Orchestrator, we should see the job being created because this is going to start an automation. So I click run, and we see now the add numbers process is running. Once it says hopefully successful, there we go, we can go back to Postman, and we can see down here that we got a result back saying out result is 7 because 3 plus 3 plus that extra 1 is of course 7. Also, if we go back into Orchestrator and look at the logs for this job, we can see the log messages that we added. Incoming values are 3 and 3, and the result is 7 because we're really bad at math here. So why this is so exciting is because this is a brand new way of letting your agents discover tools that it needs in order to solve your problems or meet the goals that you state for it. And this is just it's a standard. It's from Anthropic. They released it, I think, in October or November of 2024. It's still brand new to a lot of people, including UiPath, but they're definitely working, I would say almost day and night, to get this implemented in a good way into the UiPath platform. Because with this implementation, as you just saw, you can very easily call automations from outside UiPath in the UiPath platform and have robots do their things, whether it's a simple calculation like this one, or if it's a longer running process, including human in the loop and document data extraction and all kinds of other stuff. This is just a very interesting way of opening that whole thing up. And of course, also from within your UiPath agents, when you add other servers or external servers to your agents, then those agents can do stuff that they would otherwise require a lot of coding in order to do. So very exciting stuff. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Not very many people are subscribed to my channel, so if you're not, please do. And I just hope to see you in the next one. So good to be back. See you soon.